You're visiting with your neighborhood outlaw correspondent at High at Nine News. We're covering the cannabis stories that have to do with crime and punishment, law and order, justice,
Oh,
prohibition,
this is great.
people being locked up. Yeah, the war on drugs, the war on cannabis, it's still going on. It's still raging hard. I know some of us out here on the beach in California puffing purple passion. We don't remember the days, but I'm here to remind us until they're not here anymore. So this one's coming to us out of Korea. Interesting story here. We have group of 17 US soldiers arrested for smuggling in synthetic marijuana to a Korean army camp. A group of 17 US soldiers have been arrested for smuggling synthetic cannabis into a US army camp in South Korea. The police in the Gyeonggi province have arrested 22 people, including 17 U.S. soldiers, on charges of violating the Narcotics Control Act. The soldiers have been accused of smuggling synthetic marijuana using military mail to the U.S. mainland and sending it to soldiers stationed at Camp Humphreys. Among the 22 suspects arrested, 17 were U.S. soldiers, 4 Koreans, and 1 Filipino national. They are suspected of smuggling into the country, distributing, buying, and smoking synthetic marijuana between February and May of last year. Local police were tipped off by the U.S. Army Criminal Investigations Divisions last April and carried out 4 search warrants and seizures on 2 military camps between May and August, handing the cases over to prosecution one by one. The police confiscated $12,850 in proceeds, 4,300 milliliters of mixed liquid. I'm not really sure what that is, like an illegal mixed liquid, or they just had a bottle of water. I don't know. And 27 electronic cigarette devices that the suspects had at the time. In addition, 80 milliliters of synthetic marijuana worth 1.76 million were one was also secured at the scene as evidence. The arrested U.S. soldiers will be dealt with through the domestic investigation and trial in accordance with the Statute of Forces Agreement. A police official said the distributed synthetic marijuana was brought in through the U.S. military mail, so there is a risk that the military mail could be used as a drug supply chain. We will continue to cooperate with CID in the future to investigate the U.S. military that handled domestic synthetic marijuana. We will continue, he said. Mira has contacted the U.S. Army Criminals Investigation Division for more information. Camp Humphreys is located in the west coast of Korea, and it is dubbed the Army's home in Korea. So we got a lot of things going on right here. Um, I'm familiar with the synthetic marijuana, or what they call synthetic marijuana. K2, the spice, like the in prison, there was a lot of that going on. A lot of the same pathways. They're having problems with it coming in through the mail and yada yada yada. Let me just say this right off the get. It is not synthetic marijuana. It is nothing like synthetic marijuana. If you look at somebody who is under the effects of this so-called synthetic marijuana, they almost look like a zombie standing over like the side of like a counter or something in the most contorted way, like literally like sleeping on their feet. It's really sad. I don't know, like people don't even know what's in some of these research chemicals that they're calling synthetic marijuana. Please stay away from it. They Please, if you're going to use any type of cannabis, I use a tested product that's coming out of a store that's legal, that you know is going to be safe. I know, like, it's appetite or it's appealing to use some synthetic marijuanas when people have to use drug tests for jobs and probation and these other type of things, but it's just not worth it. It's not worth it, and it's not real. You're not getting any marijuana effects on that. um, I think this is like the U.S. Army is just getting a little bleed over from what was going on in some of our other facilities. Um, I'd hate to see any soldiers that were on the stuff that I saw. It would be really scary. So I mean, I'm with, like, listen. if you can smoke regular cannabis and still perform your duties, not high and perform your duties, but smoke cannabis off duty and still be able to perform and be responsible. I think the U.S. military is a merit-based organization, and it still should be, even with the use of cannabis, as they let people use cigarettes and they let people use alcohol. Um, so I'm interested to know what my other correspondents have to say on this. I'll bounce it back to you guys. U.S. Army caught smuggling, quote, synthetic marijuana into a Korean camp.
Well,
And
they typically have a status of forces agreement, as you mentioned, Luke. How does the local jurisdiction of the military deal with problems like this, where someone's violating international import and export laws and the local jurisdiction's laws of bringing the stuff in? So these guys are liable to be prosecuted under Korean law, and people just don't really understand that just because you can have weed in the United States doesn't mean you can have it anyplace else, and you're liable to get spanked really hard for bringing anything that's a cannabinoid, synthetic or not, into these countries. They're really hard on it. And synthetic, you're right, Luke. When I was in Halfway House, they were smoking this shit all around me. Scary. It stunk crazy, and they were just on the floor curled up, couldn't even grab their ass with both hands. It's hard to watch that stuff. That stuff is scary. I don't even know what it is. Synthetic. What does that mean? Is this one of the um, delta
I
eights
mean,
or
yeah,
or
yeah.
THCO, whatever?
Delta 8 is definitely a synthetic cannabinoid. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, I don't want any of the audience to get confused on this, like as if this is, some of the isolated compounds of cannabis or something like that. What they're spraying on things in the mail and stuff. I don't want to get too detailed on the processes that they handle for this, but what they're introducing on the mail is not a THC or cannabis derived uh, um, molecule base. What you're seeing is like basically um, some Chinese research chemicals. That's what you're smoking. Smoking some stuff that they came to in a lab over in China. They're dipping sheets of paper in them, and they're smoking the paper. And like Dale said, it's like really sad when you see people that are under the influence of it. They're like literally like curled up zombies, drooling on themselves. There's different levels to it, of course, but the heavier use it's really sad. It's really sad.
and I agree with what Guap says. He's like, synthetic cannabis is not cannabis. That's why it's called synthetic cannabis. Just like Marinol is synthetic THC, it's not real THC. All the same thing. These synthetic drugs are very, very interesting. And one other cool little funny point that Malik threw up in there. He says Miley Cyrus's "Flower Song" is about her addiction to spice, not her breakup from her husband. Just a theory.
I mean, listen, I saw guys literally like sell everything in their locker. They wouldn't even have a bar of soap to go to the shower in. I mean, that's
Mhm.
how addicting that so-called synthetic marijuana was.
But
I mean,
I
I'm telling you, it was like crazy scary.
Yeah, I had a friend. I had a friend that tried some of that stuff one time. Spice. Had watched a couple videos, and these people just passing out. I'm like, what makes people want to even do this in the first place? And my buddy did it. He was like, oh my god, bro, that was probably the worst experience of my life. I would never touch that with a 10-foot pole again in my life. So I encourage you all to stay away from spice.
Here,
K2,
here.
whatever it is, all of that stuff. Stay away from this crazy stuff that people are just trying to hawk on you. You know what I mean? Go and buy some real
Just to
weed.
be an overall philosophy in general, a lot of what is sold at stores is synthetic. It's chemicals claiming to be food.
Yep.
Um,
Very,
yeah.
very true. Very, very true. That's why everyone spends so much money at whole paycheck.